Hannah Matthews adjusted the strap of her bag as she stepped into the lobby of the downtown Chicago hotel. The air inside carried a faint scent of polished wood and lingering perfume from guests passing by. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor, each sound echoing louder in her mind than it should have. She had been traveling for business for years, but this time something inside her felt heavier. The marriage she had once cherished was beginning to feel like a shell. Cole had grown distant, buried in work, distracted even when they sat at the same table. She had not intended to think about him tonight, but loneliness crept in the moment she handed her luggage to the concierge. She moved toward the elevators, relieved that her day of meetings was finally over. The doors slid open, revealing a near-empty car, dimly lit by a recessed panel of soft yellow light. She pressed the button for the parking level, hoping to grab a few things from her car before settling in for the night. The ride began smoothly, the faint hum of machinery surrounding her in a dull rhythm. She leaned against the railing and closed her eyes, already imagining a glass of wine in her hand upstairs. Then the lights flickered. At first, it was just a small stutter, a blink that drew her eyes open, but the jolt that followed sent her heart into her throat. The elevator shuddered violently, stopping between floors with a groan of strained metal. Hannah gripped the railing tighter, her chest tightening. Her throat went dry as she pressed the emergency button, hearing the muffled static of a system that did not respond. A cough startled her. She turned, realizing she was not alone after all. In the far corner stood a woman, tall, poised, her silhouette framed by the dim light. Hannah had been so consumed by her own thoughts she had not noticed her enter. The stranger's expression remained calm, her lips curled slightly as if the sudden halt was more nuisance than danger. "Looks like we're stuck," the woman said, her voice low and even. Hannah tried to steady her breathing. "Yes, I guess so. Do you think anyone will notice soon?" The woman shrugged, the motion graceful. Her jacket shifted and Hannah caught a glimpse of toned arms beneath a fitted blouse. "They'll get to it eventually. No point in panicking." Easy for her to say. Hannah's pulse was racing, her palms damp. Claustrophobia pressed in around her, making every inch of the small cabin feel suffocating. She fought the urge to slide down to the floor. The woman stepped closer, not invasive, but near enough that Hannah could smell a faint trace of something floral mixed with spice. "Breathe with me," she murmured, her green eyes catching the flicker of the dim bulb above. "In and out. Just focus on me." Hannah obeyed before she realized it. The rhythm of her breath slowed, the sharp edge of panic softening. She studied the stranger's face, noticing how her auburn hair fell loosely across one shoulder, how her gaze held steady without wavering. There was a steadiness there, an energy that anchored Hannah in that moment. "I'm Hannah," she said finally, her voice softer than she intended. "Bianca," the woman replied, offering a hand. Their palms met in the half-light, warm against warm. It should have been ordinary, a simple courtesy, but the contact lingered. Hannah felt a charged pulse through her skin. She withdrew quickly, unsettled by the rush in her chest. Minutes stretched into what felt like an hour. The air in the elevator seemed warmer with each passing moment. Bianca leaned casually against the wall, arms crossed, as though she were waiting for a train rather than trapped in a steel box. Hannah sat on the small bench in the corner, trying to distract herself with idle questions. "So, are you here for work too?" Hannah asked, more to fill the silence than anything else. "Yes. I run my own firm," Bianca answered, eyes narrowing with a playful glint. "Advertising. Clients love to drag me to conferences." "You?" "Marketing for a tech company," Hannah replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's not as glamorous as it sounds." Bianca's laugh filled the space, smooth and rich. "Nothing's glamorous when you're chasing deadlines. But you look like you carry it well." The comment landed heavier than it should have. Hannah looked down, embarrassed by the warmth in her cheeks. Compliments were rare these days, rarer still from a stranger who spoke them with such directness. The elevator jerked suddenly and both women grabbed for balance. Hannah lost her footing for a split second and Bianca's hand shot out, steadying her by the elbow. Their eyes locked, close now, closer than before. Hannah's breath caught, but neither moved away immediately. It was only when the speaker above crackled with the sound of a distant voice announcing that maintenance was on the way that Bianca released her. Relief flooded Hannah, but something else stirred beneath it, something she could not name. When the doors finally pried open and a technician guided them out, Hannah stepped into the parking level with trembling legs. The vast open space felt like fresh air after confinement. She adjusted her blouse, trying to regain composure. Bianca walked beside her, unaffected, her stride purposeful and confident. They paused near the exit ramp, the cool night air filtering through from the street beyond. Hannah turned, intending to thank her, but Bianca spoke first. "You handled that well," she said, a trace of amusement in her tone. "I didn't feel like I did," Hannah admitted, her voice still shaky. Bianca leaned slightly closer, enough for her words to land intimately. "You did better than you think. Sometimes we surprise ourselves." Hannah wanted to respond, but words tangled in her throat. Instead, she nodded, clutching her bag like a shield. "I'll see you around," Bianca added, stepping away toward another corridor. Hannah watched her leave, the echo of her heels fading into the distance. A strange emptiness followed, as though the brief entrapment had bound them together in a way the open space could not sustain. She shook her head, forcing herself back toward her car. Later, lying in her hotel bed, Hannah stared at the ceiling, unable to settle. She replayed the moment in the elevator, the hand gripping hers, the calm voice guiding her breath. She wondered why it mattered so much, why a stranger's presence lingered when Cole's voice on the phone earlier had left her numb. She told herself it was the shock, the adrenaline, nothing more. Yet her body hummed with restless energy, her skin recalling the brush of fingers against her arm. She closed her eyes, willing sleep to come, but images of green eyes and auburn hair flickered behind her eyelids like sparks refusing to fade. The city outside pulsed with nightlife, distant music and laughter seeping through the windows. Hannah rolled over, pressing her face into the pillow, hoping to bury the thoughts. But deep inside, something had already shifted. The elevator had stopped that evening, but something inside her had begun to move. The second evening in Chicago stretched long and heavy after a day packed with seminars and endless chatter in hotel ballrooms. Hannah had smiled through handshakes and rehearsed introductions, but her energy was gone. She slipped away from the last panel, exchanged a few polite nods, and retreated toward the lobby bar. She told herself she only wanted a quick drink before bed, something to settle her nerves, but underneath that excuse was a restlessness she could not define. The bar glowed in amber light, soft music playing from hidden speakers. Shelves of liquor caught the reflections of tiny lamps, glass sparkling in muted colors. The crowd was thinning, mostly travelers in tailored jackets, tired but unwilling to return to their rooms. Hannah slid onto a stool at the counter, grateful for the low buzz of conversation. She ordered a gin and tonic and cradled the glass in both hands, watching the ice float lazily in the clear liquid. She was lost in thought when a voice spoke close by, warm and tinged with humor. "I'm starting to think fate has a sense of timing." Her head turned quickly. Bianca eased onto the stool beside her as if she had been expected, her hair catching the light, her jacket open to reveal a black top that molded easily to her frame. The sight stirred something low in Hannah's stomach. "Of all places," Hannah said, her tone trying to mask surprise. "Of all places," Bianca repeated, smiling as she lifted a hand to signal the bartender. She ordered whiskey neat, her voice calm, her posture relaxed. It struck Hannah again how at ease she seemed in every setting, whether trapped in an elevator or seated in a crowded lounge. They began with safe topics. Conferences, travel, the city's unpredictable weather. Yet the rhythm between them carried an ease that Hannah rarely felt with strangers. Bianca's laughter slipped in often, genuine and unguarded. Hannah found herself leaning closer without realizing, eager to catch each inflection of her voice. The drinks helped. Hannah finished her first glass more quickly than planned and agreed when Bianca suggested another. Their conversation shifted gradually toward personal matters. Hannah admitted her fatigue with constant business trips, the loneliness of hotel rooms that all smelled the same. Bianca nodded knowingly, sharing stories of airports, endless client calls, the blur of unfamiliar cities. At some point, the chatter of other patrons faded into background noise, leaving only their voices weaving back and forth. Hannah could not stop noticing details, the curve of Bianca's fingers against the glass, the gleam in her eyes when she tilted her head to listen. She knew she should look away, but every glance returned. The spell broke when a man stumbled past, clearly intoxicated, nearly knocking Hannah's shoulder. He mumbled an apology, then lingered too close, his breath heavy with alcohol. Hannah tried to turn back to the bar, but he leaned nearer, asking where she was from, his words slurred. Before Hannah could respond, Bianca stepped in. She placed a hand on the man's chest, firm but controlled, and said quietly, "She's with me. Move along." The authority in her tone left no room for argument. The man blinked, muttered something under his breath, and backed away. Hannah exhaled slowly, her heart thudding with a mixture of gratitude and adrenaline. "Thank you," she murmured. Bianca's eyes lingered on her a moment longer, softer now. "You looked uncomfortable." "I was," Hannah admitted, her voice catching in her throat. Bianca's smile curved gently. "Then I'm glad I was here." They left the bar not long after, the air inside suddenly feeling too heavy. Bianca suggested some fresh air, and Hannah followed without hesitation. The rooftop terrace was mostly empty, only a few guests smoking near the far side. They chose the opposite corner, where the city stretched out in glittering lights. Cool wind swept past them, carrying the hum of traffic below. For a while they stood in silence, watching the skyline. Hannah's pulse still raced from the encounter downstairs. Bianca leaned against the railing, her profile sharp against the glow of skyscrapers. "You don't strike me as someone who lets people push her around," Bianca said quietly. "I don't," Hannah replied, surprised by her own defensiveness. "But sometimes I freeze." Bianca turned, studying her carefully. "You don't have to apologize for that. We all freeze sometimes." The way she said it carried no judgment, only recognition. Hannah felt seen in a way she hadn't expected. Her chest tightened with something unfamiliar, something both dangerous and magnetic. She realized how close they were standing. The breeze toyed with strands of Bianca's hair, brushing them across her cheek. Hannah felt the urge to reach out, to tuck them back, to see what it would feel like to touch her. The thought alone made her lips part in a silent gasp. Bianca noticed. She leaned slightly forward, her eyes never leaving Hannah's. The space between them shrank, a current sparking in the inches that remained. Hannah's body reacted before her mind could catch up. She leaned too, just enough that their breaths mingled. Her heart hammered. Her husband's name flickered in her head, but the sound of Bianca's breathing drowned it out. The kiss was inevitable, yet at the final second Hannah pulled back, trembling. She pressed her palms against the railing, forcing distance. "I can't," she whispered, the words torn between apology and plea. Bianca's gaze lingered, steady, not pushing, not withdrawing. She simply nodded, the curve of her lips neither smile nor frown. "I understand," she said, voice low. The admission only deepened the ache inside Hannah. She turned away, desperate to hide the storm on her face. Together they left the terrace, descending into the quiet halls of the hotel. They walked side by side without speaking, their footsteps echoing softly on the carpet. At the corner leading to their separate rooms, Hannah paused. Her throat felt dry, her mind tangled. She wanted to say something, anything, but no words surfaced that could capture the turmoil. Bianca spared her the effort. "Good night, Hannah." The sound of her name in Bianca's voice sent a shiver down her spine. She forced a faint smile, whispered the same, and slipped into her room. Inside, she leaned against the closed door, chest heaving. The memory of that near kiss haunted her more than any actual touch. She paced to the window and stared at the glittering city, trying to calm the fever building under her skin. She had pulled away, but her body screamed with protest. She thought of Cole, asleep somewhere hours away, unaware of the battle inside her. He would never know how close she had come to crossing a line tonight. Yet Hannah knew she had already crossed something else, a boundary in her heart that could not easily be reversed. She climbed into bed, restless again. The sheets felt cold, the silence of the room unbearable. Every detail of Bianca replayed, the way she stepped in to protect her, the way she leaned forward under the city lights, the restraint in her voice when she accepted Hannah's retreat. Sleep came only in fragments. Each time Hannah drifted off, she jolted awake, her mind dragging her back to that railing, to that charged space between them. By morning she had surrendered to the truth she refused to admit aloud. She wanted more. The next day dragged with presentations that blurred into each other. Hannah forced herself to sit through them, nodding at speakers, taking notes she would never read again. Her body was present, but her mind kept drifting. Every break, every glance at the mirrored walls of the conference hall, she found herself searching for a flash of auburn hair or the sharp curve of a profile she knew too well. She told herself she was ridiculous, but her pulse betrayed her each time a tall figure passed through the corner of her vision. When the final session ended, Hannah headed for the gym, hoping the treadmill would drown her thoughts. She changed quickly, pulled her hair into a messy knot, and climbed onto a machine near the back. The rhythmic pounding of her feet should have steadied her, but the steady beat only amplified the unease inside. Then she noticed her reflection in the long mirror ahead, and just beyond her shoulder, another shape appeared. Bianca was there, already running, her pace strong and fluid. The mirror caught the shine of her skin, the taut line of her arms pumping in rhythm. Hannah's mouth went dry. Their eyes met through glass, a silent challenge sparking in that instant. "Race you," Bianca called, her tone light yet daring. Hannah hesitated, then increased her speed. The machines hummed louder, their feet drumming like thunder. She could barely hear her own breath over the rush of adrenaline. Each glance at Bianca revealed determination etched across her face, the curve of her lips hinting at satisfaction. Sweat gathered on Hannah's temple, slid down her neck, disappeared beneath her shirt. Minutes later, both slowed, panting, their chests heaving. The tension between them was more than physical exertion. Bianca stepped off first, grabbing a towel, wiping her brow with an ease that only emphasized her composure. She tossed the towel over her shoulder, eyes fixed on Hannah. "Come upstairs with me," she said, her voice low but firm, almost a command. Hannah froze, caught between impulse and restraint. She shook her head slightly, her hand gripping the treadmill rail, but her feet betrayed her, carrying her off the machine and toward Bianca. She told herself she could still refuse, that she could still turn away, but when Bianca opened the gym door and glanced back, Hannah followed without another word. They walked the corridor in silence, the distance between them charged. Hannah's heart pounded louder than their steps. When they reached Bianca's room, she swiped her card, the green light flashing before the door clicked open. Hannah hesitated at the threshold, her hand hovering near the frame. Bianca stood close, her perfume drifting between them, a mix of jasmine and smoke. She leaned forward, her lips brushing Hannah's ear. "Tell me you don't want this, and I'll let you go." The words struck deep, stripping away Hannah's excuses. She could not say them. She could not lie. Her silence was all the answer Bianca needed. The moment the door shut behind them, Bianca pulled her close, their mouths colliding in a kiss that stole Hannah's breath. It was urgent, messy, filled with weeks of unspoken longing compressed into one explosive release. Hannah's back pressed against the wall, her hands tangled in Bianca's hair, pulling her closer, deeper, until thought dissolved into sensation. Clothes loosened, buttons slipped free, fabric sliding against skin. Hannah gasped when Bianca's hands traced along her waist, fingers exploring with reverence and hunger combined. She had forgotten what it felt like to be touched with such intensity, as if every inch of her mattered. She pressed closer, surrendering to the storm building inside her. They stumbled toward the bed, falling together onto the sheets. The mattress dipped beneath their weight, the world narrowing to the heat of bodies entwined. Bianca's lips moved along Hannah's collarbone, her breath warm, her touch igniting sparks wherever it lingered. Hannah arched into her, eyes closing, surrendering to the flood. The night unfolded in waves. Gentle caresses gave way to fierce embraces, laughter tangled with moans, whispers melted into gasps. Hannah lost track of time, her senses overwhelmed. She discovered new edges of herself, places she had locked away, now revealed by the persistence of Bianca's hands and the patience of her mouth. When the frenzy eased, silence settled. They lay tangled in rumpled sheets, skin damp, hearts still racing. Hannah's cheek rested against Bianca's shoulder, her fingers tracing idle patterns across her stomach. She felt both fragile and alive, her body humming with aftershocks. Bianca kissed the top of her head, her voice husky with exhaustion. "You're beautiful when you stop holding back." Hannah's throat tightened. No one had spoken to her like that in years. She shifted, turning to face Bianca, studying the way her hair fell across the pillow, the glow of her eyes in the dim light. For the first time in so long, Hannah felt seen. Not as a wife performing roles, not as a colleague completing tasks, but as a woman, raw and desired. Her hand cupped Bianca's cheek, thumb brushing against her lips. The kiss that followed was softer, slower, filled not with urgency, but with something deeper. They lingered, savoring the intimacy that outlasted passion. Hannah whispered without thinking, "I don't know what's happening to me." Bianca's smile was tender. "You're remembering what it feels like to live." They lay there until the city lights outside dimmed toward dawn. Hannah drifted in and out of sleep, waking each time to the warmth of Bianca's arm around her waist, the steady rhythm of her breathing. She traced invisible lines across her skin, memorizing details she feared she might forget. When morning crept in through the curtains, Hannah stirred, her body sore yet unwilling to move away. She pressed her lips lightly to Bianca's shoulder, savoring the moment before reality returned. She knew the day would demand explanations, disguises, silence. But here, in this fragile cocoon, none of that mattered. For a fleeting stretch of hours, Hannah belonged entirely to herself and to the woman who had set her free. The days that followed blurred into a dangerous rhythm. Hannah attended conference panels, shook hands, exchanged polite words, then drifted away the moment she could. Each break became an opportunity, each hallway a possible meeting place. She found herself glancing at doors, wondering when Bianca might appear, and when she did, the world shifted. A brush of fingertips in a corridor, a whisper in the elevator, a smile that lingered too long, these moments strung together like beads of fire. Every secret meeting added weight. They stole kisses in corners, let their hands linger under the table at the cafe near the hotel lobby, shared whispers during evening walks. The thrill grew sharper because of the risk. Hannah knew she was building walls of deception, yet she climbed higher, intoxicated by the view. One evening, after slipping out of a dull networking reception, she found Bianca leaning casually against the wall by the garden doors. The look on her face carried the same intensity as their first night in the gym, but this time there was no hesitation. Bianca pulled her into the shadows, their mouths meeting with urgency, the garden around them alive with the hum of insects and the distant noise of music. Hannah clung to her, drowning in the heat of the moment. She told herself she would stop, that she would draw the line, but every promise crumbled the moment Bianca's lips found hers. It might have continued without consequence if not for the sudden buzz of her phone. Hannah jolted, her screen lighting up with Cole's name. Bianca froze, her expression sharpening. Hannah turned away, answering quickly. Cole's voice carried through the line, warm at first, then curious. He asked why she sounded breathless, why the background was so noisy. Hannah forced a laugh, claiming she had stepped outside for air after too many introductions. He accepted the answer, but not without pause, and when the call ended, Hannah felt her stomach twist. Bianca studied her quietly, the glow of the garden lights catching in her green eyes. "He doesn't know," she said, not as a question, but a statement. "No," Hannah admitted, her throat tight. Bianca reached out, her hand brushing Hannah's arm. "How long do you think you can keep this hidden?" "I don't know," Hannah whispered. They stood in silence, the weight of truth pressing between them. Bianca finally sighed, drawing her closer again, though her voice carried a warning edge. "I won't stay a shadow forever." The words lodged deep in Hannah's chest, a reminder of the line she had already crossed. The pressure built over the next days. A colleague from her team nearly stumbled upon them one afternoon. Hannah had slipped into Bianca's room for a quick meeting, only to hear a knock at the door. They froze, Hannah scrambling to straighten her blouse while Bianca pressed a finger to her lips. Through the peephole, Hannah glimpsed a coworker waiting with a folder in hand. Her pulse raced as she whispered an excuse through the door, claiming she was busy on a call. The colleague left, but not without a raised brow. Hannah sank onto the bed afterward, trembling. That was too close. Bianca sat beside her, calm as ever, yet her gaze pierced. "Close calls will keep happening. You can't live in two worlds forever." Hannah wanted to argue, but no words came. She knew Bianca was right. That night, lying in her own hotel bed, she stared at the ceiling, her phone clutched in her hand. Cole had texted again, sweet messages about home, simple notes that should have comforted her. Instead, they felt like chains. She typed a reply, erased it, typed again, then tossed the phone aside. Her chest ached with guilt, but her skin still burned from Bianca's touch. The duality consumed her. By day, she played the professional wife, composed and efficient. By night, she dissolved into someone unrecognizable, surrendering to desire that had waited too long. She knew she was living in contradiction, yet she could not imagine stopping. Bianca, however, was growing restless. During one of their late-night encounters in the dim lounge, Bianca leaned close, her voice carrying more edge than softness. "I need to know what this means to you. Am I just an escape, or are you willing to risk something real?" Hannah's breath caught. She looked into those eyes and saw both vulnerability and demand. "I don't know how to answer that," she admitted. Bianca pulled back slightly, her lips tightening. "Then you should figure it out. Because I can't be a secret forever." The words haunted Hannah long after Bianca left that night. She returned to her room, sat in the darkness, and felt the walls closing in. She thought of Cole, of the years they had shared, of the promises once spoken with conviction. She thought of the distance that had grown, the silence at dinners, the nights spent alone even while sharing a house. She thought of Bianca's hand in hers, the way she felt seen in a way she had forgotten was possible. Her phone buzzed again. Cole was calling, and this time he wanted to video chat. Panic surged through her. She scrambled to dim the lamp, adjusted the camera to hide the room's disarray, and forced a smile when his face appeared. His eyes scanned her image with quiet suspicion. He asked if she was all right, if she was sleeping enough. She gave vague answers, hoping her trembling didn't show. She ended the call quickly, claiming exhaustion, and collapsed back onto the bed with tears pricking her eyes. The double life was unraveling. She could feel it. The next evening, she walked with Bianca through the quiet corridors of the hotel, their arms brushing occasionally. They spoke little, but the silence was loaded. When they reached the stairwell, Bianca pulled her aside, pressing her back against the cool wall. The kiss was fierce, demanding, but when it ended, Bianca's forehead rested against hers, the softness in her tone breaking the moment's intensity. "You can't keep running from this," Bianca whispered. "Choose him or choose me. But don't pretend you can keep both." Hannah's throat tightened, her voice barely audible. "I don't want to lose either." Bianca pulled back, her eyes sharp. "That's not how this works." She walked away, leaving Hannah trembling in the stairwell. The echo of her footsteps lingered long after she was gone. That night, Hannah sat alone in her room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She hardly recognized the woman looking back. The lines of guilt and longing etched across her face told a story she wasn't ready to speak aloud. She pressed her palms against the vanity, whispering into the silence, "What am I doing?" But no answer came. Only the distant sound of laughter from the hallway and the memory of Bianca's ultimatum ringing in her ears. She knew the choice was coming. It was no longer a question of if, but when. By the end of the week, Hannah carried exhaustion in her bones. The sleepless nights, the rush of stolen hours, the lies rehearsed too many times, all of it pressed down on her until she could barely breathe. The conference was drawing to a close, but the tension in her life was only beginning to crest. She packed her suitcase with unsteady hands, each folded blouse and skirt feeling like a stone in her chest. She knew the moment she returned home, everything she had been avoiding would surface. Her phone chimed on the desk. Another message from Bianca. "We need to talk. No more hiding." Hannah sank onto the edge of the bed, staring at the words until the screen dimmed. The demand was clear. Bianca's patience had run thin. She wanted a decision, and she deserved one, but Hannah's heart clenched at the thought of giving up either world. That evening, the facade finally shattered. Cole had noticed irregular charges on their phone bill. He had followed the trail of unfamiliar numbers, and suspicion hardened into certainty. When Hannah arrived home, the house too quiet, he was waiting at the kitchen table. Papers lay spread before him, highlighted calls and timestamps, evidence she could not explain away. "Who is Bianca?" His voice was calm at first, but beneath it trembled something sharper. The air collapsed around her. She opened her mouth, but no words came. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Don't lie to me, Hannah. I called the number. I know it isn't business." Her chest ached as if her ribs were closing in. She wanted to deny, to spin another excuse, but the truth pressed too heavily. Her lips parted, her voice breaking. "I never meant for this to happen." Cole's face shifted from suspicion to devastation. His fists curled against the table, knuckles whitening. "How long?" She whispered the answer, too ashamed to meet his gaze. His chair scraped back with a screech. He paced the kitchen, running a hand through his hair, muttering fragments she could barely hear. Betrayal colored every movement, every breath. He turned back to her finally, his voice raw. "Was I not enough? Did you ever think about me while you were with her?" Tears welled, blurring her vision. She tried to reach for him, but he recoiled, stepping back as though her touch burned. In the silence that followed, her phone buzzed again. Bianca's name glowed across the screen. Cole's eyes fell on it, fury igniting. He snatched the phone before she could react and pressed accept. "Bianca?" His voice was low, dangerous. On the other end, Bianca hesitated, then spoke, her tone steady. "Yes. And you must be Cole." The exchange pierced Hannah like a blade. She wanted to snatch the device, to end the call, but her body refused to move. Cole's jaw tightened. "You've been with my wife." Bianca's response came without apology. "She isn't just your wife. She's a woman who deserves to feel alive." Cole's breath hitched, his knuckles trembling around the phone. He ended the call abruptly and threw the device onto the counter. The silence that followed was deafening. Hannah broke it, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry." Cole shook his head, eyes glistening though he refused to let the tears fall. "Sorry doesn't erase what you did. Sorry doesn't fix us." The night dissolved into arguments that tore open every hidden wound. Words they had never dared to speak flew across the room, each cutting deeper. By dawn, Hannah sat curled on the couch, drained, while Cole paced the hall, unable to look at her. Later that day, Hannah met Bianca one last time. They chose a quiet cafe on the edge of town, far from anyone who might recognize her. The air was heavy, the scent of roasted beans mingling with the tension between them. Bianca reached across the table, fingers brushing Hannah's hand. "Have you decided?" Hannah's lips trembled. "I can't leave him. No matter how broken we are, he's my family." Bianca's eyes closed briefly, pain flashing across her face. "And what about us? What we've shared, What we've felt, does that mean nothing? It means everything, Hannah whispered, her throat tight. But I can't burn down my whole life. I can't. Bianca nodded slowly, her hand slipping away. Tears rimmed her lashes, but she held them back with dignity. I understand, she said softly. I don't like it, but I understand. For a long moment they sat in silence. Then Bianca leaned forward, cupping Hannah's face in her hands, her touch both tender and final. One last kiss, she murmured. Hannah's eyes stung, but she nodded. Their lips met, bittersweet, filled with longing and loss. When they parted, Hannah tasted salt, unsure if it was from her own tears or Bianca's. She walked away from the cafe with heavy steps, each one carrying the weight of goodbye. The city around her bustled with life, indifferent to the storm raging inside her. At home, Cole waited on the porch, his gaze distant as the sun dipped low. Hannah sat beside him, her words barely a whisper. It's over. For good. He turned to her slowly, his expression unreadable. Are you sure? She nodded, reaching for his hand. I want us, Cole. I want to fight for what we still have. For a long while he said nothing. Then he pulled his hand away, his face hardening. It's too late. I already called a lawyer. Her heart splintered. No. Please, we can work through this. He shook his head, rising from the chair. You broke us, Hannah. And some things can't be put back together. He walked inside, leaving her on the porch, the fading light wrapping her in shadows. She sat frozen, unable to move, the truth settling in. She had gambled everything for a taste of freedom, for nights of passion, and now she had lost both the life she knew and the new love she had discovered. As night fell fully, Hannah realized the depth of her ruin. She had chased desire, convinced herself she could balance lies and truth, but the collapse had been inevitable. Now she was left with silence, regret, and the memory of two people she had loved in different ways. The house behind her no longer felt like home, the future ahead uncertain. Yet beneath the despair flickered a small, stubborn ember. For the first time in years, she had remembered what it was to feel, to want, to be alive. The cost was unbearable, but the knowledge could not be erased. She wrapped her arms around herself, staring into the dark yard. Nothing would ever be the same again, and she had no one to blame but herself. When the dust settled, Hannah was left alone with the fragments of a life she had once believed unshakable. She had discovered the thrill of being desired, the rush of intimacy that had been absent for so long, yet she had also learned how quickly passion can burn everything to ash. Her story is not about villains or heroes, but about choices, about the weight of secrets, and about the cost of silencing your true self until the need becomes too strong to resist. Sometimes what begins as escape becomes revelation, and sometimes revelation demands a price. Hannah found love in an unexpected place, but she also discovered that timing and truth matter as much as desire. We are left wondering what her future holds, whether she will rebuild or whether she will always carry the shadow of what was lost. For anyone listening, her journey is a reminder that honesty with ourselves and with those we promise to love is not a luxury, it is survival. This was another story of forbidden tenderness and dangerous passion. You've been watching She and She. If you felt moved, if you found yourself in Hannah's struggle, don't forget to subscribe and stay for the next story.